What is up, family? Welcome back to the Garage. Gerald here with you. I just watched the BAFTA Film Awards. So instead of doing a live reaction where I saw the winners live, which it's very hard to do really ever in my life with my kids, but definitely with the staggered release of the BAFTAs and then it's being aired later, it still hasn't even been aired here where I am in the US as I'm recording this at like 5 in the afternoon. It still doesn't come on E for a few more hours. But luckily I already saw it on the BBC. So I saw these speeches, I saw who won, the presenters. There were a couple of curveballs, but I actually predicted two of the larger ones. So I guess the surprise wasn't as great as it would have been for me because I kind of went out on a limb for a couple of these no guts, no glory predictions, if you will. One of them, which I've been saying for a very, very long time, and I will make sure to gloat on this video, so stand by. But in all seriousness, the first thing I'll talk about is the actual show, the broadcast. So Alan Cumming was the host. He's done that for multiple years now. Obviously a funny international comedian. He's, very charming and quippy, and I like his brand of humor for sure. But he is in the same boat as a lot of other comedians that do these shows. Most of them, but not all of them. As you guys know, I was a big fan of what Conan did and what Nikki Glazer's been doing lately on the Globes. But for the most part, it's not necessarily the host's fault or even the writer's fault. It's just the vibes in those rooms. They're just harder to please, it feels like. And the British audience here, which I usually get this vibe from the BAFTAs anyway, but I don't know why it was glaringly obvious this time around or if it was worse than it normally is, but they're very stiff, right? Like there's just not a lot of emotion and they're not people, standing up dancing or having a great time like you would see at the Globes or even the Critics' Choice. Now, of course, the Oscars is a little more boxed in, a little more elegant, if you will. So I think the BAFTAs are more that way in terms of what the audience vibe is kind of like. They don't sit at tables, right? They're in like auditorium or movie theater seats, kind of, like you would see a musical theater show like Broadway, and they're just all sitting there staring at the stage. And it's just like, I don't know, it's just a weird vibe for this type of award show. The awards themselves, I didn't have a ton of problems with, but I can never just really feel like it's as fun as it really should be. I think back to the Ariana DeBose opening number, and the vibes for that show I can remember being much better, even though the winners I may not have liked as much, or the movies. But I don't know, man, they just need to do something to kind of make it a little more hip, a little more energetic. And just, even the opening number that Alan Cumming did with some other comedian friends, it was like a Zoom call, so it wasn't like you couldn't hear laughter if there was any because it wasn't very funny. Paddington showed up on the Zoom call. I don't know, it was just cringy. And luckily for us, he only had a couple bits throughout the night that, were cringy also and super awkward, but they weren't like overdone. They weren't doing them after every award. They were very snappy with the awards. So it's a double-edged sword for me because I like that the show's 2 hours. So they started on this delay, which I mentioned I was going to bring up. So it was at noontime Eastern, my time, which I think is like 7 or 8 p.m. over there. 2 hours later is when the broadcast starts airing on the BBC there locally. So they have a 2-hour delay essentially to edit and chop up the broadcast while it's still happening because it's into the second hour or the third hour of the show by the time it airs. And so they're able to kind of like whittle it down as it's happening, and then of course when it ends, to make sure it's truncated into a 2-hour time frame. I love that, but I don't necessarily prefer it. If the Oscars did that, I would be fuming. I would have to go to LA every year and just wait outside the theater like you're watching a game at a bar or something, because there's no way you're going to be able to avoid the results on social media unless you're like me and you just turn your phone off, which is what I did until 2 p.m. today. So if you stayed away from it for those first 2 hours somehow, which I did luckily, but not everybody's going to be able to, you're going to miss some of the awards in that 2-hour window because the whole show is probably closer to 4 hours, right? 3.5, 4 hours. It's going to be very similar to the Oscars. They have, I think, maybe 3 less awards on the night than what the Oscars end up giving out in real time. But you miss some of the awards on stage. So they did have those clip packages put together where they did flashbacks like earlier tonight, and it'll show the awards and people that won. It was some of the awards for production design, costumes, makeup. They did it for score and sound. And there was probably like 8 or 10 awards that were off camera where they showed who won and then a little bit of their speech, but not the whole thing. And then, just kind of cut back to the actual show. But just so you guys know, if I had to choose between a definite 2-hour runtime and seeing all of the awards televised in 3.5 hours, I'm going to choose the latter for sure. Now, when we get to the awards on the night, I'll touch through the winners on the major categories. I won't go over every single category tonight unless it's something of note that I want to point out to you. Let's start with what I would consider the surprises or the underdog or not largely predicted wins, however you want to phrase it.
And the BAFTA goes to Bunmi Musaka.
Let me just start by saying, well. Who is your boy that said Wunmi Masaku from Sinners was going to win Best Supporting Actress at the BAFTAs, which was potentially going to take her to the Oscar for Best Supporting Actress, especially if she gets support at next weekend's SAG or the Actor Awards? Spoiler alert, it was me about a month ago. I dropped it on one of my power rankings back in the late part of January that I had a hunch, and I started thinking when I was making notes for these various performers about her British heritage, about the fact that she had been nominated for a horror film that basically nobody saw. She was a winner there before. Obviously a tremendous performance and a movie that they really loved. We'll talk about how well Sinners did tonight. So yeah, Wunmi Masaku winning supporting actress was definitely probably the highlight for me. Yes, because I predicted it, but also because a couple different reasons. I love her and I love that movie. And we know One Battle is going to be very dominant this season, regardless of how many Oscars you think it's going to win. It's going to have a good showing at the Academy Awards. But you don't want, or at least I don't want, One Battle to take like everything away from Sinners, you know what I mean? Where we get to the Oscars and Coogler gets, original screenplay, and then Ludwig gets score, and that's it. Like, I don't want anything like that to happen. That still could happen, but I really would rather it be spread around a little bit because we got so many great films this year. And I think PTA is definitely deserving of like director and picture and adapted screenplay, right? But he doesn't have to win everything, or the movie doesn't have to win everything. So back in late January, I said, I'm going to go out on a limb here, even though these are my power rankings, which I put out every Thursday, so you guys can check my work and receipts if you want to. But I said, Teyana Taylor is number one in the power ranking. Absolutely, because we're basing it on the resume and what's happened on the circuit. This is the factual thing. She's number one. But I said that's not my prediction. My prediction's Wunmi Masaku, and here's why. And lo and behold, she now has the BAFTA. Teyana Taylor has the Globe. Amy Madigan has Critics' Choice, right? We're going to get the Actor Awards next weekend. I haven't made those final predictions yet. They'll be on the channel in the next 3 or 4 days. But I do think that's probably still Amy Madigan, unless people have not voted yet, because voting is open right now for the Actor Awards. And they see Wunmi, and they see her speech, which was emotional and very heartfelt. So awesome. Like, I cried about 10 times during the show because I follow these movies and performances all year, and I feel like I know these people and I'm pulling for them in the audience or something like that. So I do get emotional, especially when it's somebody I'm pulling for and they have a great speech and they let the moment reign over them and share it with us, And that's what happened with her win and her speech, which was phenomenal. She looked beautiful. Great shout out to Ryan Coogler when she was giving her speech about, his art form and being an artist and believing in her. I mean, just beautiful, beautiful stuff. And real quick, I also made a note of when the camera would cut away to some other people that were in the race, and it would cut over to where all the One Battle cast was sitting together in a couple rows up front. Poor Leo, by the way. He was in like every shot of the awkward jokes that Alan Cumming was doing. But anyway, whatever. It's Leo, so he looked good, but still, I felt bad for the dude. When it would cut away to the One Battle cast, they were going nuts for Wunmi, and I absolutely loved that. Chase was acting like her mom just won a BAFTA. I mean, like, it was the greatest thing. Teyana was like clapping so feverishly, jumping up and down, and of course she was going up against Wunmi in the category, and that was happening all night in various categories. But it was just so great to see them so supportive of their opponents, if you will. That community needs each other right now with a lot of stuff that we're facing in the entertainment news and stuff like that. And yes, just so you know, I'm going to be doing that power ranking on Thursday of this week. She is still my prediction, because I think if Amy Madigan wins the SAG, which I expect her to do, she's not going to win the Oscar. It's the only nomination for Weapons, and I just don't, and she could, but I just don't feel great about predicting that. So I would still probably go with the last televised winner, which right now is Wunmi Masaku. Now, I was talking about peers being happy for their opponent or other actor in the category. That maybe was not so much the case with the supporting actor win, which was a surprise that I missed. Not only did I miss Sean Penn winning supporting actor for One Battle After Another, I had him like dead last in my possibilities at the BAFTAs. Ironically, I have him predicted to win the SAG next weekend. So now I might really stay with that prediction, because I was kind of questioning that for the last couple of weeks. But now I'm definitely probably staying there, just so everyone knows. Again, I'll have the power ranking for you this week. But when he won, of course, he was not in attendance. Neither was Jacob Elordi. I'm pretty sure Elordi is working. Sean Penn really doesn't go to these things. I was actually surprised he was at the Golden Globes last month. He doesn't usually show up for these things. He's kind of been vocal against the whole award system. And we had Maggie Gyllenhaal and Gillian Anderson presenting the award for supporting actor. So they had a joke and like a bit kind of built into their presentation. You know how the they come up and tell jokes or, talk off the cuff. They're naming different like little generic facts about each nominee and how one actor's been in the business for 50 years and has never been nominated at the BAFTAs before. But we won't tell you who that is. No hints. And then they give a couple hints, of course, which it's Stellan Skarsgård, right? Which I had predicted and a lot of people had predicted. I think the last check I saw on the Award Expert app was like 87% of the Award Expert users thought that Stellan Skarsgård was going to win this. And honestly, he probably should have. Sorry. But Sean Penn, lo and behold, wins it. And you could see when Maggie Gyllenhaal, she was the one that verbally announced it. She opens the envelope and you could see I don't think she was happy about it because she like paused for a second and it was almost like it was a sigh where she was like, Sean Penn.
And the BAFTA goes to Sean Penn. One battle after another.
Kind of like disgusted, and then people start clapping and like the two presenters are looking at each other. They realize he's not there. So Maggie Gyllenhaal's like, oh, he's not here tonight. So we're going to accept the award, blah, blah, blah. And Gillian Anderson goes over to the mic and she's like, I'm just going to take it home with me or something to that effect. And then Maggie Gyllenhaal was like, we'll make sure he gets it. And then Gillian Anderson makes a face like, will we? I don't know. So I don't think the two of them specifically were very happy about Stellan not winning that. But it gave me those like flashbacks to like the Chadwick Boseman, Anthony Hopkins thing because, Stellan Skarsgård was like mentioned throughout their whole presentation. And then it gets to the award and it goes to Sean Penn. So I feel bad for Stellan because now I don't know if he can win the Oscar. I really got to figure out what we're going to do with the supporting categories. I think I'm good on Wound Me right now, regardless, probably. Unless Teyana wins the SAG, then I'll go back to Teyana. But when it comes to supporting actor, that's even trickier, right? Because you got Stellan at the Globe, but he's not nominated at SAG, so he's not going to win again now. He's either going to win the Oscar or he's not, but that's it for televised season for him. So you've got him for the Globe. The Critics' Choice went to Elordi, who did not win here. Then you have the SAG next weekend. Then you have the Oscars. So what if next weekend it's Benicio del Toro, which is very possible, by the way. What do we do then? Now, if it's somebody that's already won, it won't be Stellan because he's not nominated there. So if it's Elordi or Penn, that's your Oscar winner, or at least that's who I'm going to predict, because they'll have those two major precursors, especially on the strength of their films. It's not just a solo nomination, in other words, like a Amy Madigan situation. So the supporting categories are very exciting. I was pulling for Stellan here, but in a weird way, it's kind of cool that he didn't get it because it just makes that race very exciting. If he had gotten this, I think he's the Oscar winner, no problem. But now that he doesn't have it and he just has the Globe he's sitting on all the way to March 15th, it's going to be a lot harder for him to win that, or at least it's not going to be as sure of a thing. So it's very exciting for the supporting races this year. Other things that, stood out to me, I loved when Ryan Coogler won original screenplay here. There's a couple notes I made. He's the first Black person to win a screenplay prize at the BAFTAs, which is absolutely phenomenal for having that niche in the timeline of finally moving forward with historical data, especially for the BAFTAs. They have a historical African-American bias or person of color bias specifically, really, they do. I mean, they come through time and again, but tonight, if you think about it, this was pretty monumental. I mean, Ryan Coogler for screenplay. We were already talking about Wunmi Mosaku. They gave British debut to My Father's Shadow, which is a largely African-American cast with an African-American writer and director. The short film was even a African-American gay man. That was one of the off-camera ones, so I didn't get to see the presentation or the speech there. So they really turned up for a minority that they usually kind of push to the wayside. So on top of that, I've seen Sinners, obviously, and I've seen My Father's Shadow, and I will just tell you, those are deserving. Those are great wins. However, I had predicted Sentimental Value to win original screenplay based solely on that bias. So the fact that that didn't happen and Coogler got it and kind of broke that historical trend, I love it. I have no problem getting that wrong. And if there was ever a doubt, which I don't know why there would have been, but if there was ever a doubt in anyone's purview that Ryan Coogler was not going to, at a minimum, win the original screenplay at the Oscars, I hope you have moved past that. He is absolutely on his way to the Oscar for screenplay, possibly more, because they did love Sinners. It was also really cool because he gave an awesome speech. I'm trying to think. His and Woonmi's are probably, which is ironic from Sinners, is probably my favorite speech. It was so good. He shouted out Joachim Trier and Sentimental Value being one of his favorite movies. He said how Trier kind of coached him and mentored him 15, 20 years before. And now they were in the same category and writing, and it was crazy.
Joachim was actually my mentor. I met him over a decade ago. He showed me how to be a better writer, a better filmmaker. I always love him and I love his movie.
He had this great story about his Uber driver the first time he came to London, like taking him around to show him sights and turning off the fair and like welcoming him to the country for the first time, and how he's always thought of that place as a second home and those people as family because of the way he's always embraced there. Like classy shit. Like we're shouting out our opponents, our challengers. We're talking about the body that voted for us and how much we appreciate them. Like he had a great speech, and of course gave a shout out to Michael B. Jordan specifically and how he loves him and one of his best friends, and it was just really good stuff. I also love when he won, the camera cuts to him and he sits up and he goes, shit, you can read his lips. He didn't expect to win that. Now he's been doing great in the screenplay categories, but he knows the bias there, right? And he knows that he was probably not the favorite with that particular body. No major surprises in VFX. That went to Avatar. I wasn't going to jump that ship. I know some people did. Avatar's winning this. I mean, it's easily the best visual effects, and whenever Avatar's in the category, they win. So until that stops happening, I'm just going to keep predicting it. If it had stopped happening this year, I would have been wrong, but it didn't. They got that. So there was definitely a few like weird BAFTA, what the fuck are you guys doing wins tonight. Not even that I dislike them or whatever, but just that they're strange and they don't really do anything to help us going forward. And the BAFTAs tend to do that. So does the Critics' Choice and some other bodies. They'll just award shit that's like not even in the race the rest of the year. So there's a children's and family film called Boong, Boong, that won the children's and family film. It was the only one of any movie mentioned on the whole show tonight that I had never even heard of before doing these predictions about a week ago. So that one, I'm sure it's a great movie, but that was like, okay, that doesn't do anything for us. And then when it comes to animated film, as expected for a lot of people, it went for Zootopia 2, or Zootropolis, as it's said in Britain. I went out on a limb for Elio because I know they have a great history with Pixar, and that was only 3 movies in the category, so every movie had a 33% chance, at least, to win. So that was kind of a toss-up category for me. I thought what was going to happen was Zootopia was going to win Children's and Family for box office success and getting the family together and all that shit. And then the animated would go to one of the other two, but it didn't. It went to the other way around, and then Boone ended up getting Children's and Family. So that was a bit of a surprise, but it's also one of those like, okay, here's the British people doing what they do again. It was endearing and it was touching to see Robert Aramayo win 2 really big awards on the night, but at the same time, I'm a little perturbed. Nothing against him, and I haven't seen that movie yet. It doesn't even come out here in the States until I think April next month. But he won for the Rising Star Award, which is voted on by the public. And of course, as my friend Christian said when I went on his podcast last week, most of the voters are probably British or live over there. So I went on a limb for Chase Infinity because I feel like she should have gotten that based on the group. But again, I haven't seen I Swear in Fairness. But it went to Robert Aramayo, which I think everybody else but me was predicting, so that's not really a huge shock. They gave him that, but then they also gave him Best Lead Actor. So we were collectively kind of debating, is it going to be Timothée Chalamet? And if he doesn't win, who's going to get it? It's probably going to be Ethan Hawke or Leonardo DiCaprio. Or if they really love Sinners, then Michael B. Jordan will swoop in, and like, maybe even Jesse Plemons, because, everybody loves him as kind of like the dark horse that's been forgotten about in other circles. If anything, Timothy wanted that to happen. Because if that had been someone that he's up against at the Oscars that won that, he may be in trouble, because he still might not win the SAG if they don't want to give him the same award 2 years in a row because he got it last year. I've said that many times. I'm still probably going to predict him, but that he might lose there too because of that reason. Now we're just kind of like waiting to see what the SAG does, and it's probably going to be Timmy there. But even if it's not, we're just going to be in a situation where like, okay, who wins the Oscar? Who are we going to go out for here? Are we going to go out for Timothy or whoever the actor winner is, the SAG winner? That's probably going to be your 2 options. And of course, it's not going to be Robert Aramayo in either situation. I did love Aramayo's speech, though, especially the second one when he won lead actor, because he felt the way that I'm feeling right now, telling you how I reacted. He did not know he was going to win that. And honestly, he probably didn't even think, he probably wouldn't have even voted for himself, because when he's up there, he's like, can't even speak. By the way, they show his dad in the audience like he's at a football game and he just scored the winning touchdown. I mean, it's like the greatest shit. I loved it. I was in tears. I don't even know this guy. I hadn't even seen the movie, and I was getting emotional because of the family support. And he has a story where he talks about Ethan Hawke, who was also in the category for Blue Moon. And he talks about how Hawke, like 10 or 15 years ago, came to a class that Robert Aramayo was in film school. And he said, you came to my class and you like did a little lecture for us. And you talked about, humility and always, being humble and like all this other stuff. And it's cutting back and forth between him trying to come up with the words to thank Ethan Hawke and Hawke in the audience getting emotional. I mean, welling up because, it was good stuff. It really was. I just wish I had an opportunity to see that movie and to know whether he was competitive for that. But obviously he was, and he's British, so that helps. And it's funny, everybody hit me in my comments about Wumi Masaki a month ago when I was talking about that. Just because she's British, this and that. Guys, I mean, if there's a British actor in a well-revered film in the race, they might not win every single time, but they are absolutely going to have a home field advantage with the BAFTAs. And I don't know why people, fight against that stat, if you will. But Robert Aramayo, big wins on the night that do nothing for Oscar predictions. So congratulations for him. A couple that I went out for that, I picked them, but I don't know if the majority did. Non-English film was a bit of a what's going to happen here. And I was kind of battling with that on my last Power Rankings video because I really wanted The Secret Agent to do something so that it would make it look better for them at the Oscars for Brazil. But it did end up going to sentimental value, which is what I predicted here. That makes sense with the BAFTAs. But now that it's won that, and now that neither one of them are up at the actor awards for ensemble or anything like that, I mean, we're at a situation where it's like, why would sentimental value not win the Oscar? It would have to be like a Brazilian uprising that they just love it so much at that particular body that they just give it enough votes to get it over sentimental value. I'm talking about The Secret Agent. I love both movies, but unfortunately for the Brazilians, I just don't think it can overcome the multiple nominations, every acting category, top of the line, director, screenplay, obviously best movie. And, it's the stronger of the two films. It just is. I was secretly pulling for It Was Just an Accident to come in and really fuck everybody up in this category. And also because we have let Jafar Panahi down, man. That movie, we just let that thing fall off a cliff. Like, I don't know what happened to It Was Just an Accident. I mean, just as recently as like a month ago or 6 weeks ago, everybody I know, including myself, was saying It Was Just an Accident is going to win everything, maybe even Best Picture, just 6 weeks ago. And now it's like we can't buy an award for that movie. I mean, it's insane. I don't know what happened. I really don't. Director went to PTA, Paul Thomas Anderson, and he had a nice dedication to Adam Sumner, who was his assistant director who passed away, I think, a few months into the production. And he's been with PTA for 20 years, done a lot of films with him. A lot of other people have worked with him as well in Hollywood. So it was wonderful that he dedicated that award, the director award, to him and spent a good chunk of his speech on Adam Sumner. And I think that the emotionality around that and losing him in Hollywood and being one of those guys that a lot of people knew and worked with and everything and respected, that, I mean, PTA is obviously going to win regardless, but I think that is an added element that's going to make it really hard for him to be beaten when it comes to the Oscar. So we're good now. I mean, this is it. He's got the DGA, he's got the BAFTA. I mean, what doesn't he have? I mean, if I'm being honest with you, I mean, he's good. So, a lot of people are Coogler this, Coogler that, and I love Ryan Coogler. But from a prediction standpoint, I mean, I would literally fall out of my chair if PTA lost either screenplay or director at the Oscars. I mean, movie too, really, but at least that one's a little bit more of an argument you can make. But yeah, he's got this. Frankenstein won the 3 big technical awards that we thought it was going to win, or at least I did, and I think the majority of people did, which was production design, costume design, and makeup. Wonderful speech from Kate Hawley, the costume designer for Frankenstein, and she got tearful. It was very emotional. She was talking about Guillermo del Toro, thanking him for being an artist and for believing in her. Just good shit all around. So as expected, Frankenstein is in the driver's seat for like these major technical awards that I just mentioned. But it turned out the way I predicted. Editing went to One Battle After Another, which now I think makes it really strong for that Oscar, which then will only make it even easier for them to get Best Picture if that ends up happening. But sound did go to F1, so they didn't correlate. And I thought they might. So I predicted what happened, but I just was like, I might miss this because I think one movie might get both. Score went to Sinners, as expected. Ludwig is sweeping. He has a broom that he's literally taking with him to every show the rest of the year, just so you guys know. As expected, Jessie Buckley, I mean, we're at the BAFTAs. She's going to sweep everywhere, but here, if she hadn't won here, like, I'd probably be in the hospital trying to get I'd be hyperventilating. Like, it'd be crazy. I'd be like her in that one scene in the movie. I mean, there's no way she was going to lose this. So Jessie Buckley wins lead actress presented by Cillian Murphy, which was awesome for Hamnet, of course. And then the last award of the night was presented by Glenn Close. God, I love her. She's a treasure. She had a great joke about listing all these people involved in productions. And then she's like, oh, and I'm forgetting something. Oh, yeah, the actors. And she delivered it perfectly. So, but One Battle After Another is your BAFTA winner for Best Film. As expected, Best British Film went to Hamnet and Best Film went here. So that's the way I picked it to go. I could have seen Hamnet upsetting here, especially if I Swear had gotten British Film, but it went how I expected it to go. There was a sliver that it might not, but PTA gets up there with the producers and the whole cast went on stage and they were very happy. PTA gets up to talk, and throughout the night, I could tell he was very nervous in the beginning when he got his first award, which would have been for screenplay. He barely said anything and he was kind of like having trouble finding the words and wasn't enunciating. Probably that was weird. You could tell he was nervous. And then he won again for director, and he was a little bit more in the zone, but he was still kind of like he was forgetting to say some things. But by the time he got up here for the last prize for Best Film, he was there. He was like, this is what I want to say. This is who I want to thank. And then he does a couple more lines, and he says the Nina Simone quote, keep making things without fear. And he's talking to his fellow filmmakers, and they should be fearless right now. That's what I was talking about at the beginning of the video a little bit. We got to be there together. The community needs to we're strong in this. We're going to make shit that only humans can make, right? People are going to respond to on a mass level, just like they always have. And then he says, keep making things without fear. See you at the bar. And that was the last line before Alan Cumming comes out and thanks everybody for being at the show.
She says, I know what freedom is. It's no fear. So let's keep making things without fear. It's a good idea. See you at the bar. Thank you. Thank you.
Let me just go through my notes here, make sure I'm not forgetting any major ones. Casting went to I Swear, so that doesn't help us. I thought that might go to sentimental value. It could have gone to Sinners. Sinners might get SAG Ensemble, so that would have been huge if they'd have gotten this and SAG Ensemble. Then you have a Best Picture argument, and that's not even with what PGA ends up doing. But they didn't. It went to I Swear, the British film. That's great for them, but it doesn't tell us anything for the Oscar players in that category, which is a new award at the Oscars, so we really don't know what they're going to do. If there's anything else I forgot to mention, I'm sorry. I wasn't going to touch on every single award tonight. That's my recap of what happened at last night's BAFTA, or the British Oscars. For the most part, it went according to plan. The only major things that were a slip up from what I thought would happen was really Sean Penn getting supporting actor. Even though I don't mind it, I just didn't expect that, especially at the BAFTAs. And all the awards that I Swear ended up kind of swooping in and taking. I thought it would win some stuff, maybe British film, which it didn't even win. But instead it got casting. Robert Aramayo got 2 acting awards on the night. So it really took care of business and kind of didn't do anything for us that make Oscars predictions, which is fine. That's not their goal, obviously. But other than those, it was pretty normal. The show was a little cringy and not high energy like I spoke about, but I think that's just the setup of how they do it. It's just kind of rigid, But all in all, a decent show with great shout outs for these films and performances. Man, I wanted justice for Chase Infinity, though. I wanted her to, at a minimum, get that Rising Star. I mean, we knew Buckley wasn't going to lose, so I wanted her to get that Rising Star award. Man, she looked like a rising star too. Am I right? Let me know down below what you thought of the show. What award on the night of the BAFTA surprised you the most based on your predictions, or you just didn't see that happening? For me, it would be Robert Aramayo in lead actor and Sean Penn in supporting actor. I really didn't see either one of those happening. I had Penn at number 5 as a possibility, so I didn't even think that was going to happen. I thought it was between Benicio, really, Stellan, Elordi, but definitely not Sean Penn, so that one surprised me, as did Aramayo in actor, because I thought that was going to be between Leo or Timothy. So here we are. So Robert Aramayo, put us on pause until the next major award show, which will be next weekend's The Actor Awards. And I will have those predictions for you probably by Friday of the end of this week. So look for those on the channel. Let me know what you thought down below. I will see you out here next time. Tea and crumpets will be provided in the garage.